Hey everyone, Amia here from Resonance Astrology and welcome to my channel. Today we're gonna take a look at how the current collective grief, it seems like, is linked to a lot of the Cancer placements and energies. I feel like a lot of people are blaming the wrong planets right now, not realizing how much of Jupiter actually also constitutes of provoking these feelings of grief and letting go, because expansion can be painful too. And so I wanted to touch upon these topics also today because, first of all, yesterday we had the Sun and Jupiter cazimi. This means the Sun and Jupiter came together, which is a sort of rebirthing point for the planets. Every time they come together with the Sun, it's like a rebirth moment for a new cycle, like this conjunction moment. Jupiter in Cancer has a lot to do with birthing as well, which is one of the reasons why Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer. And I think this is also a lot of the grief we are feeling right now. Not necessarily the birthing grief, but this grief of coming from a place where Jupiter was in the sign of Gemini, which was in its detriment. A lot of us kind of forgot what this joyous side of Jupiter should feel like. And so right now we're almost being a bit of overwhelmed with like what we are kind of letting go of. Because even if we're heading towards a direction that is new, that is good, that where we want to go, like where we want to evolve to, letting go of that past can still feel painful, can still involve grief. There is also grief in, heading towards a life that is filled with joy, especially if we're coming from a life and a phase in our lives that was filled with these other things, maybe dismissing ourselves, maybe playing small. Starting to play big can lend itself to feelings of grief. Also, excuse me, this video is a bit unscripted today just because I woke up and I felt it. I felt it in my womb to be able to talk about this today. And also what I think a lot of us are not realizing, or just what I want to put out there as well, is that yes, Cancer is symbolically the beginning of summer, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere. At the same time, the summer solstice is this part of the year that symbolizes, like, it's the longest day, but what happens after that? The days are starting to get shorter again. So while we are initiating the season of summer, we are technically initiating the dark of the light part of the season. So there is something about darkness creeping back in, which is interesting, right? Because the next sign is Leo, and Leo is like the middle of summer, and like it's the fixed sun. It's usually when the weather is the hottest. But then Cancer has something to do with, if we think about spring, now we're heading into summer, there seems to be like a loss of something. Even though we're heading towards this lightness and brightness, there seems to also be loss involved. Like, yes, we're in summer now, but the days are also getting shorter. Again, the seasons are more like a metaphorical play on things. Darkness doesn't mean bad, lightness doesn't mean good. It's just how we can kind of view things. Everything has its good and bad sides, or its positive and negative sides, or what I usually like to say to people is pleasant and unpleasant sides, because everything in the end is experienced through us, and if we experience something as pleasant or unpleasant is linked to so many factors in our own birth chart and experiences. And one transit could be extremely pleasant for somebody and extremely unpleasant for somebody else. I think a lot of people are blaming things on Saturn right now, which is okay. Saturn and Neptune are also bringing in a lot of disillusionment about like maybe what is or is not possible. And so that is probably also linking or like lingering up in the air a bit, especially because, guys, we just had like the Sun and both Jupiter square Saturn and Neptune. So both of these energies are quite present in the air. But I think people are underestimating how much Saturn, while yes, it's in fall in the sign of Cancer, actually can lead us to taking actionable steps and actually provoking us to take that self-responsibility, which sometimes, again, can also be harsh if it has been something we have been struggling with. Saturn rules extremes. Saturn rules about the opposition aspect. So a lot of Saturnine themes can often be about holding both extremes. And with Saturn in Aries, I just made a recent post about this, is about where in our lives have we been overly responsible, taking too much responsibility, feeling like I'm the only one that has to carry everything. That's very Aries, right? Like wanting to do everything on our own. Or falling into the other extreme, which is also Aries, being like, YOLO, screw the consequences, you only live once, like who cares what happens tomorrow, I'm just like live my life and not worry about what I'm doing right now, how it's going to impact my future, and like kind of then shrugging away from the responsibility aspect. So a lot of that is up in the air as well. But again, right now we're actually mostly focusing on Jupiter and Cancer, just because that new moon in Cancer today is kind of ruled or coming off of that Jupiter Sun cazimi. So it's like a double rebirthing moment right now. And again, grief. I mean, all the water signs hold these emotions of grief, or emotions in general. Energy in motion. And so there's usually with grief, we need to give ourselves a container to be able to hold it. And what a lot of people get wrong about Jupiter, they're like, oh yeah, Jupiter is about luck, is about expansion, is about growth. Okay, have you heard of growing pains perhaps? Like, expansion is not just pleasant. Expansion can actually be extremely uncomfortable. When you're birthing a child, not that I would know, I haven't birthed a child, but I'm just like assuming, and what I've heard from many people is there's also some sort of grief involved after that, because you are going towards a new life chapter. You're now officially a mother. And even if that's something that you love doing, it's like still a new chapter, and you might be grieving that old life. Same as when you enter a relationship or maybe leave your old job for a new job that is better. There's still a process of grieving involved, because it's like saying goodbye to that. And at the same time, you're saying goodbye to that part inside yourself that maybe needed to carry you through being able to push through and manage that. And sometimes ease, more pleasure, especially after a period of survival, of trauma, can feel threatening. Expansion can feel threatening, can feel overwhelming. Like, I'm allowed to have a job that is peaceful, that I work way less but earns me way more money, even though I've been struggling for 10 years, paycheck by paycheck. That's grief too. Like, grieving that you don't have to be in survival mode anymore. And sometimes our nervous systems are not adapt to that. That's why so much of Cancer is also linked to the body. Okay, the moon in ancient astrology doesn't just rule over our emotions, it rules over our whole body, over our whole like environment. And interestingly enough, what shapes our body the most, and like how we think, our emotions, it's our experiences in childhood, the environment we had when we were born. I mean, the birthing process is like so important. Like, there's a lot of birth trauma that can happen, right? And a lot of the earliest developmental trauma can really shape us in good or bad ways. But technically, you could say even the birthing process for the child and for the mother is a sort of separation trauma, because you have to imagine this: the child is in the stomach for like 9 months. There's like a closeness. It's a home. The womb, like it becomes a home to the child, and the mother is carrying that child. And then all of a sudden, the separation process happens. Like, that is traumatic in and of itself. Like, having that separation, being born into this world is inherently a traumatic process. Like, I'm not trying to, like, you know, over exaggerate it here, but it is inherently like a traumatic process of loss as well, of like cutting the umbilical cord. So again, and a lot of things that are happening right then are extremely important for our shaping. I mean, it's how our birth charts happen, right? It's like the moment of birth is our whole birth chart. So whenever you come into this earth is forming your birth chart. So moment of birth, also the moment of passing on, like it's a new passing on, is associated also again with so much importance. And ancient astrologers, actually, the way the planets were sorted out in a specific order was, like in the Chaldean order, is that the moon was actually the first or the last planet in that order. So when your soul was coming into, like incarnating, carne, right, coming into flesh, the last planet it passed through was the moon. That's why the moon rules over fate and fortune and our like earthly realm. Everything that is happening right here. Fate and fortune is something that fluctuates, going up and down, up and down. And when we would pass away, when the soul was leaving the body, the first planetary body it would pass through again would be the moon. So the moon is actually a very like deeply personal planet to us. It's also, if we do things like maybe electional astrology or like any sort of ritual, like you, and if you want to get a good chart, you would look at to where the moon is positioned, because the position of the moon gives us so much insight. And the moon serves as this reflective light of the sun. So it kind of like takes in things and reflects them back to us, serving as you could say, sort of a mirror. Which is interesting when we look back again at childhood environment. When we are children, the way we learn to be in our body, to maybe process emotion, is by taking in the environment and then mirroring that back. So, I don't know. I feel like when I learned these things, my mind was just a bit blown. So I'm hoping like I can constitute that for you too. So let me just take a sip of my tea. And so, the grief, I feel like, that we are going through right now, the disillusion that we are going through right now with, you know, Saturn and Neptune in Aries, it's a big, I feel like Saturn and Neptune in Aries hold a lot of, like this almost kind of atheistic energy. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I think atheism has a lot of like good things behind them. I think a lot of people need to wake up from certain delusions about like what is not possible, and like outsourcing their powers. At the same time, it can also get very nihilistic very quickly. And Jupiter is still here in Cancer, like restoring our faith, holding faith. Jupiter is also a planet of protection. It protects us literally up in the sky from asteroids hitting the Earth. It does the same here with us when it's transiting us. And that's what sometimes can be a bit tricky about grasping Jupiter, understanding Jupiter. I would say out of all the planets, I have the hardest relationship with Jupiter, because I can't like, sometimes I don't really realize what is or what isn't Jupiter. And Jupiter has a lot to do with our intuition. And so the thing is, maybe like, I'm sure you know that experience. You're outside, you walk somewhere and you just get this feeling like, I should not go down that alley. Or like, I should not go there. I should just not do that. I should not go to the party tonight. And then you wake up the next day and you like, you hear the news or you hear something, you're like, oh, see, yeah, it was good. I didn't do that. Well, you know, sometimes we hear things about the news, but if it's just this example of like not going down an alley, like we don't know what would have happened if we did. And that's like the protection of Jupiter. We don't know always what we are being protected from or of. if it never reaches us. Like, you don't know, maybe something horrible might have happened down that alley, but you don't know because you never went at the end, and like luckily you never went. Like, we don't need to know. But that's like Jupiter, so it like protected and shielded us, but sometimes we don't know from what it did. And so sometimes we don't realize like how lucky we have been in certain areas or aspects of our life without like realizing what we have been protected from. Maybe not getting that job was the biggest blessing you could have gotten. Maybe that person rejecting you was the biggest blessing you could have gotten, because now you can focus on something much better. So like, that's Jupiter as well. That's Jupiter as well. So let me think. I hope I gave you enough like insight into like why the collective grief is currently so prevalent. I think both Venus and Taurus and Jupiter and Cancer are really calling us to go back home in our original home, which is the body. Can be something that is very harsh if we're not used to it, if we're used to processing things in the head. We're coming off from a Jupiter in Gemini. It made us very much process things in the head. It's a Jupiter that is in detriment, a Jupiter that is in a Mercury sign. So it's very head heavy and very, scratch that. But my point is like, we're really being called to go into the body, which is something that is, most of us are not used to, don't really know how to do that. It's something that can also be very scary to do, especially if it's about grief. I think on a societal level, we just don't even know how to really hold grief collectively, because it's something that takes time and patience to like just sit with. Can take months, can take years for some people to like just sit with grief until it fully leaves our body. And sometimes grief, loss are just things that inherently change us, and it's also that change of never becoming that person that we ever used to be that can also be like painful and like needs us to sit with the grief, which can also be the expansion of Jupiter. I think Jupiter reminds us a lot of the times that if we want to, like, the capacity to experience more pleasure in life ultimately leads us to having to also experience more pain in our life. Like, pain and pleasure are very, very interlinked. Almost like the same coin from different sides, we could say. And so often what happens with the Jupiterian expansion is like Jupiter invites us to basically let go, going through this grieving process, because ultimately that will then transform itself into the capacity to experience more pleasure in life. But we need to first develop this vessel to be able to hold more pain in our life. Let ourselves be changed by that pain. There's this quote, I don't know from which book. It's just like a post I saw on Instagram like a few times, or on Pinterest, or probably also on Tumblr, which is like, only death and love change all things. Gosh, my voice is cracking. I think that's very true. There's these small moments, and like death can be like in a, it doesn't have to be in a literal way. It can just be like a death of a persona of yours, or of a life phase of yours. It changes so many things. Like, it's this small, like, we don't know which moments will alter and change us forever. And whether that is in a direction that is more pleasant or unpleasant, it still involves grieving. It still involves grieving. I mean, we get the first Jupiter return when we are like 12, 13 years old, which is like the official initiation into becoming a teenager. That is also grieving. So many, like, you wonder why so many teens are freaking overwhelmed with being teenagers, because there's no like ritual, no rite of passage that we are doing. So many girls get their periods during that time for the first time. You know, the hormones, Jupiter rules over hormones in medical astrology, like growth hormones, of course. Jupiter grows the things. So that's also letting go. That's also a shedding period. That's also becoming a new version of ourselves, saying goodbye to childhood. And then later on, when we get like our second Jupiter return, which is around the ages of 23, 24, yes, we are official adults by then again, but still, I feel like for a lot of people, it's like a second adulting phase again. I think partially because it's also just coming off from the closing Saturn square, but the beginning of our 20s is like filled with a lot of like transits that are like boom, 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 you know? And people, I feel like really very much underestimate, like the process of adulting and how painful that is. Especially if we're not being like held, initiated properly into that new phase. I mean, there's just like society doesn't really do that. We don't really have rituals anymore where we have like rites of passages. And I think so many people are freaking lost because of that. And that's why so many, you know, our soul always searches for meaning. And if we don't have a sort of container that gives us this ritualistic we are ritualistic beings. We need some symbolism to symbolize beginnings and endings. If we are not giving that, we start searching it through other vessels, which is why a lot of people turn to drugs during their teenage years. It's an urge to initiate the soul into something new. How do we do that? Like drugs become a symbolism into that initiation of like saying goodbye to childhood, where probably most of us were like, ooh, I'm never going to do drugs. I'm never going to be that person. All of a sudden you become a teenager, you become all the things, you try all the things you never thought you would try, right? Like how many of us have been there? All of these things, and obviously also like sexual matters and all of that, like that starts to get exploratory there. And then that starts to become the symbolism. You know, I think for so many, like, why do we put so much, not even pressure, but just importance on virginity and losing virginity? Because in our heads, we don't have a ritualistic passage. We're like, oh, that means you become a real woman, or that means you become a real man. But like, why? Is that really what constitutes being a real woman or a real man? I don't think so. I really don't think so. But like that becomes this, like nowadays, these things become the symbolic ritual ways of passage into like teenagehood, like saying goodbye to childhood. But anyhow, that's like a whole tangent in and of itself. And I really didn't want to make this video way too long for today. But I think you guys can see like why Cancer is associated with so much grief, and also why Jupiter in Cancer is associated with so much grief. And again, holding to grief really puts us into our own capacity to be able to expand to hold that. And so, to make this video also practical, because you guys know, at least if you watch this channel, I hate just going and leaving and just being like, oh cool, I told you many nice things, now go out into the world. Like, no, I want to give you practical steps. Because, I don't know, that's just like how I profited of a lot of things. And for me, I like to be able to apply things IRL. So what I did over the past few days, and what I will also do, sadly I did not yet have the time to do something for Jupiter, but it's a very nice time to honor Jupiter. Today's Wednesday, tomorrow is Jupiter Day. Thursday, if you have time, sit down during Jupiter hour as well. Maybe you recite the Orphic hymn, just to like invoke Jupiter. Make an altar for Jupiter on Jupiter Day, just to honor that like new moon, you know, like Cancer, like if you have any sort of like seashells and stuff like that, great thing to incorporate into your altar. Jupiter, like think of lavish, big, huge flowers, maybe purple flowers. Purple is the color of Jupiter. Also, that's why like a big color of protection usually. You know, sit down and meditate, feel into it if you can, like as long as it doesn't feel threatening to the body. Sometimes like just sitting down and going into the body can be threatening. That's why I always recommend folks to do body-based therapy, something that just helped me so immensely, and can just be so helpful if you have a person that can like guide you, that is just there, that can like kind of ground you back in, if maybe you struggle with this disassociating and things like that. Later on, it becomes easier to do it yourself, but in the beginning it can be, yes, like if closing your eyes and going to your body just feels so threatening, like please don't do it yourself, okay? Like we want to be trauma informed here, okay? It's very important to me that I just don't give you stupid advice that like fuels your trauma in any sort of way, because I've been there. Like there's lots of spiritual advice that sometimes sadly can like lead to just more of that, but anyhow, if that feels too threatening, just going out in nature can also be super helpful. Like there's also meditation we can do in forms of like movement. A lot of movement can be grounding as well. Tapping is something I love, that has helped me more than I ever thought it would help me, because it seems so simple. This tapping technique that you hit certain points in your body, the ones that I'm doing right now. Here under the eyes, under the nose, on the chin, here. Sometimes I even stay here for a longer while. Like this is the light one, but sometimes if I realize like, oh, there's like anger, because like a lot of grief, like underneath there's a lot of anger, okay? Like I get that. And so sometimes then I just like start to hit a bit harder and become angry, but I'm not going to do that now on camera. And then you can also tap here on the sides if you want to, like that's just like an extended version. And then also on the head. Woo! And then usually I also shake out my hands and take a couple of deep breaths, because breathing just, sometimes you need to breathe until you just, like to just not symbolize, just to like, so your nervous system realize like, it's okay, I can slowly start calming down. But really do that in a matter where like you don't just go on your phone afterwards immediately, because these things can just be further dysregulating. Every time when I'm dysregulated, scrolling on Instagram is like, I do it so much more. Like it's so much harder to get off the screen. So that, okay, so we have, for one, honoring Jupiter, honoring the planet. Sometimes astrology seems very distant. Especially if we're like here and we're like, oh, what is Jupiter doing? Like, the thing is that we can talk to the planets. The planets are entities we can talk to. And if you recite the Orphic hymn on Jupiter Day, also, by the way, you don't have to, like, the planets love efforts, okay? If you don't have time on Jupiter Day during Jupiter hour, like, it's okay. It's okay. Jupiter's not gonna hate you. Planets love when we're just, like, we want to put effort into the relationship. But ideally, do it then, if you can. Treat the planets as entities you can be in relationship with. Like, talk to them. If you're confused about, like, Jupiter and the grief it's bringing, talk to Jupiter. Like, ask Jupiter, hey, how can, like, help me with this? Can you bring me some sort of person that can teach me? Can you bring me the right therapy? Like it's interactive, okay? Like it's just like, it's not something up there that is doing something here. It can be if you want to, but it's like, no, it can be a very interactive relationship. Same with Saturn, okay? You can build relationships to all the planets, and life gets so much easier. Trust me, once you do that, because then it stops being a thing where it's like, oh my gosh, what are the planets doing to me again? To like, what am I doing to the planets? It's like something I always like. It's like one of the quotes I put on my website and everything. Like, we need to change our thinking to what are the planets doing to me, to what can I do for the planets. So that for that, Jupiter altar, always super beneficial. Like, again, sitting down, just talking to Jupiter. If you're confused, talk to the planets that you think are confusing you. If you're scared of Saturn, talk to Saturn. Tell Saturn, I'm freaking scared of you. Like, can you help me not be so scared of you? Can you help me understand you? Maybe you're going through a Jupiter return in Cancer right now. Talk to Jupiter. What are you trying to teach me? What is it that you want to bring into my life right now? Can you help me understand that? How can I, like, reap the benefits of this transit the best? And trust me, you're going to get some transmissions. Then again, doing some sort of body-based work can be literal therapy, but if you cannot, for whatever reason, afford that, which is totally understandable, or can't access it for whatever reason, I think tapping. There's lots of like videos on YouTube you could find that are good. Just taking a walk in nature can also be extremely beneficial. It's also summer. Taking a bath, going inside water, a body of water. Isn't it interesting? We call it a body of water. Again, like the link to the body. Can also obviously be great. Especially if you're somewhere where there's like salt water. And so when you're in the ocean, you can like literally just lay down and let yourself be held by that. It's like salt that is in the water, like you rise up, like you don't just sink. I don't have it here in Switzerland, but I have it in Croatia when I go on holidays in Croatia. So, but just like being in water sometimes feels so freeing. I had a water birth, so I don't know, the water element is just so extremely important to me. I also did water shiatsu at some point. That was just a beautiful experience. Look into that if you're curious. It's like shiatsu but underwater. Like that was very, very healing for me. Almost felt like a rebirth in and of itself. But yeah, just being in the water, like being in a body of water. If you can't go in to bathe inside water, if you have a bathtub at home, maybe you don't have a bathtub at home, a shower can also just be sufficient. I've had so many absolutely relaxing showers, like, maybe go and get that eucalyptus bundle, put it in the shower so you have some freshness, maybe use some essential oils, use a salt scrub, and just like, maybe stand in the shower. Sometimes I've also just like sat down and let the water pour me over in the shower. You can also do that in nature, under a waterfall if you have access to that. And just like let the water wash away any debris. Water teaches us that, especially cardinal water. Cardinal water is water that moves, a spring, a river, like the initial source of water. Mutable water like Pisces would be something like the ocean, and then fixed water like Scorpio would be something like a pond or ice, like water that is not really movable. But Cancerian cardinal water is water that moves, which is again something also like a waterfall. So things like that, like if you want to teach how to let go, spend enough time by a river, spend enough time under a waterfall, and just let the elements help you. Let the elements help you do the things. This is also how you connect to astrology. And instead of treating astrology as just something that is happening to you out there, no, you co-facilitate that experience. You experience the elements. If you want to experience Jupiter in Cancer, go to a waterfall. You'll experience Jupiter in Cancer. Go to a river where you can lay down. And again, just let the water wash over you. And just let it do its job. You don't have to do so much. That is that. Is there anything else that I wanted to say? I don't know. I think there's many smaller rituals you can do around like safety, make sure you do a lot of things that make you feel safe. For example, I have a weighted blanket. For me, that is my safety blanket. I obviously don't have it with me when I go on holidays or when I'm outside. But like when I'm like very dysregulated, going over that weighted blanket just feels so good, so good. Like having just that weight over me. I love it. So it's like the question is just like, what does safety mean to you? And like, how can you facilitate them more into your life? Getting out of survival mode doesn't just happen like that. But there's small steps we can take. I still have my plushes. I'm just going to say straight out right here. I still have my plushies in my bed and I like to sleep with them. I like to hug them. And I have one on my back and I have one on here. And when I was a kid, I had these huge like plushy snakes. And I always had like one on one side of my body, one on the other side of my body. And then I put them together around my feet. And then I did the thing with the blanket where, like, you know, you put your feet up and it goes under there. And every time I say that, I think of that vine that, like, looks at a picture and he's like, haha, I do that. If you know, you know. So, as you see, like, even as, I think as kids, we knew so many things. Like, instinctively, intuitively, we did so many things to, like, get back into safety. And now as adults, sometimes we feel like, oh, like, I'm above that. It's like, there's nothing wrong with having plushies in your bed, sleeping with them if that makes you feel better. Like, you're not less of an adult because of that. If anything, you're less of an adult if you think you're above that and you're like, oh, I'm so tough and I don't need safety. I don't need all of that in any case. Just again, like, I guess this is just like a question to ask yourself. Like, what did I do when I was a child? Because our inner child probably knows what it did to be safe. Even for people that had like a rough upbringing, you especially know what you had to do to keep yourself safe. And I don't mean it in a threatening way, okay? Like, I just mean like there's probably ways you found to regulate yourself, and there is wisdom in that. So like, don't negate that wisdom. You don't have to like go back. You don't have to go back to an environment that felt threatening and unsafe, but just like think back, like what helped. Like I know a lot of children like started doing art or started I don't know, reading books and things like that. That can be very beneficial. And you know, we don't have Neptune and Pisces anymore right now, which is about like, you know, escapism and things like that. No, now it's like Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So it's like, okay, do the things, watch the movies that let you feel a sense of safety, you know, watch a Ghibli movie, okay? Best movie to feel freaking safe and whole again. Just remember that. I should do that. I haven't watched a Ghibli movie in a while. What did I want to say? Like, do that. That doesn't mean that you have to watch 5 Ghibli movies in the night. That doesn't mean that you have to watch every, or 5 days in a row. We don't have to escape here. It means that you take responsibility for your pleasure. It's like, okay, I'm gonna watch a Ghibli movie tonight. Tomorrow I'm still gonna wake up and I'm gonna show up at work. I'm gonna show up and do this. I'm gonna take responsibility. I'm not just gonna like avoid everything in my life. That's Saturn and Neptune in Aries, okay? So there's good things happening there. Again, Jupiter in Cancer, I feel like very much restoring our faith again in things, which can be hard with a lot of the disillusionment that is going on with Saturn and Neptune. But that's the tension right now. I feel like that's very much a tension right now in the air that we need to learn to hold as well. And that holding of the tension can also bring grief, because we are so used to being like either or, pick this or pick that. A lot about life is about holding the tension of both and it's also what a lot of people struggle in birth charts with when it comes to oppositions. They're called oppositions for a reason, but it's like, maybe you don't have to be either or, you just have to learn to hold the tension of that opposition and be like, yeah, I am both in a way, and maybe find outlets for both. I know that Cancer and Aries are not in opposition. They are in a square, which is a Martian aspect, which has more to do with like action and taking things. It's like it's that friction that pulls us so we get into action, which is probably also in the air right now. But I do think it's also important. They are different energies at the end of the day. So learning to hold that friction, I think, is something important right now. And again, the capacity to hold pain ultimately expands our capacity to hold pleasure. And I think this is what I'm going to end this on with, because this video is almost 40 minutes long again, and I sincerely wanted to do it. I sincerely thought I would do a 15-minute video, but there was just much more that wanted to come out. So if you found this helpful and useful, leaving a like means the world. Leaving a comment means the world as well. Subscribing means the world as well. Going to on my Instagram means the world as well. And I hope I could help you with, sometimes even for me, like, I don't know what impact my words have on other people. Every time somebody messages me and sends me a nice message of how I help them, like, it does so much. And it encourages me to keep on doing this work. Like, it makes me feel less invisible because you don't know who is behind that screen. You don't know who sees these things. 100 views seem like nothing nowadays, but 100 people, like imagining 100 people in that room is like crazy. And yeah, so just liking helps as well. Sometimes you don't know, because like I know sometimes I watch videos and I'm like, wow, this video was so good, I forgot to like. And then you don't know, maybe a video had like super deep impactful for somebody, but they just watched it, they didn't interact with it, they didn't like it. So again, we don't know what happens behind the screens, but I just hope this was useful for you and I could be of assistance to you and channel a bit of that Cancerian Jupiterian energy right now. I'm also going to film the decans of Cancer today, which should, probably also help you guys to, I don't know, feel into that Cancerian energy a bit more and your own natal placement. So anyhow, I'm going to finish it today. I wish you all guys a blessed Cancer new moon coming out from that Sun Jupiter cazimi, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.